Hey everybody, welcome back to Gundam's Bizarre Adventure. Part 2 of my Master Grade Gundam X review. I'm going to start off here by doing some different size comparisons with other Gundams. So as you can see, the God Gundam and the Gundam X are pretty similar in height. The God Gundam actually has a little bit of an advantage as far as how high his head goes, but the X obviously has the advantage with the satellite loading cannon panels being taller. The X doesn't exactly tower over the crossbone, as a lot of the other kits do, and that has to do with the fact that the 90s lead Gundams were generally a little bit smaller than previous series and are smaller than most UC lead Gundams. But it still does look like the crossbone is notably smaller than the Gundam X. The one thing you also might notice here is that despite the fact that the X and the God Gundam were both 90s lead Gundams, because of how far apart they were spaced as model kits, there's a huge difference in their design and presentation. The X looks a lot more detailed, has a lot more in the way of panel lining and finer measurements in the dimensions of all of its individual parts, whereas the God Gundam looks a little bit bulkier, a little bit rounder, almost cartoonish, kind of ballooned up actually in certain points, like the feet and the shoulders. And I think that has to do with the fact that it's one of the first kits to have a true inner frame that was the fighting frame thing, and they built everything around that. But all of the Master Grade G Gundam kits use the same fighting frame inner mechanics, so you just kind of built around that, whereas all of the newer Master Grades, for the most part, have their own individual inner frames, and you build around those. So the X's inner frame is obviously sculpted to work with this kit, whereas the G Gundam kits had to kind of adjust for their different exterior armor. It still looks really good for its day, don't get me wrong. I love the God Gundam Master Grade, but there's a definitely a noticeable difference between the two in terms of their presentation, their colors, and just their overall look. Going now for a couple Gundams that are a little bit taller, you can notice that the Turn A Gundam obviously kind of towers over the Gundam X, and that's simply because that's one of the biggest lead Gundams in any series ever. But I felt like it'd be a good comparison to show just how kind of middle ground the Gundam X is in terms of its overall bulk. Obviously it's a pretty skinny Gundam, but then you've got the added satellite loading cannon there on the back, and then you have something like the RX-79 here, which is a very bulked out, boxy Gundam, and next to it the X looks very slim, very streamlined. Obviously, this looks a little bit maybe wider in some regards because I did paint it up and dirty it up and made it look like it's battle scarred. So I don't know if that really makes a difference, if it adds 10 pounds to the camera, as I say. But it's definitely an older Master Grade too, so that might be part of it. But the RX-79, even in the anime, looked more of like a boxy version of the RX-78, and that was kind of the point, was they were trying to do a more realistic design with that kit. I am a little surprised, however, that it's not a little bit taller next to the X. Again, that might be because of the dimensions of the older Master Grades are not quite as accurate as the newer ones, but the head height isn't that much higher than the Gundam X. The angle of the camera here actually makes it look like they're about the same, but the RX-79 is about that tall, over top of the X. So it does have a little bit of a height advantage there, and it's just generally a bigger mobile suit, but it's not that much bigger, and I'm a little bit surprised about that. As for the posability on this kit, I'm actually going to start off with the hands, which might seem like a little bit of an odd place to start, but this kit has a bit of a different design with its hands than most kits. Most Master Grades these days, you have the triple finger, trigger finger, and thumb split, where those are 3 individual pieces that go into the hand, or you have something like the Turn A, where each finger is individual and independent of each other. So those ones are a little bit more work to build, but obviously you have each finger separate from one another, and you can do whatever you want with the posing there. This kit has something similar to what they did with the Master Grade Force Impulse a little bit, where it's different bits for the fingers that you swap out. I know there's a couple other kits that do this, so I can't think of the names of them off the top of my head, but it's a little weird, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't mind the way they did it here, because everything stays secure for the most part, but it's just not a design that I'm real hot on. I kind of prefer to have the triple finger, trigger finger, thumb split. That's very standard, but it is kind of cool that you get this open palm sort of action type pose. The thumb is effectively the same as it's always been on any kit. You can do basically whatever you want with that, but the fingers themselves, you're going to pop them out of the hand piece there, and you can see there's a little indent, and there's a little plug piece that goes in there. And so you have a bunch of different ones you can swap out. You have these sort of like relaxed closed fists that can't grip on anything. They're just sort of there for like a punching pose or sort of a, you know, hands closed pose. You do have a trigger finger that will hold on to the rifle because there's a little bit in there that'll hold on to the rifle better, which is kind of nice because I guess if they're going to do these hands, I'd rather they be, you know, tight and secure on stuff than having them sort of loose and flimsy like the Force Impulse was. There's the opposite hand with, again, that little grip piece in there, and then you have one just open palm, not open palm, sorry, open fist hand, which is used mainly for the satellite loading cannon. So you can kind of swap these in and out as you want to. I'm personally just kind of a fan of the open palm ones, but obviously if you're going to have the satellite loading cannon attached, not really ideal for that. So the wrists are going to rotate 360, no problem. The connection here is pretty tight though, so it will, not super tight, but it's tight enough that if you try and move the hand, a lot of times the arm will just go with it, which is, I don't mind that so much. I mean, it's not really that hard to just grip the wrist and have it go a little bit better by itself there, but you can wobble it around, no problem. The elbow joint can bend up almost 180. The joint at the top of the arm can rotate, no problem. Can go out from the shoulder about that high. The arms can actually go down a little bit too, and you can get them to go forward about that much. So if you want him to, I don't know, cross his arms or something, you can kind of do that. Can't do it entirely, but the shoulders themselves can go up a little bit like that. The head obviously goes up and down, rotate side to side, no problem. You're not really going to be able to get him to do a 180 rotation that well, though, because of how high these ridges are on the neck. The torso obviously can wobble around just fine like that. Can rotate side to side. Not going to go too far back beyond that, though, because of the height of the back skirt and the side skirts, as well as the fact that you have this big satellite loading cannon backpack on him. But you can get him to sort of lean back a little bit, lean forward a little bit. The cockpit also will open, and as I mentioned in the first part, it is sort of like a little hatch that pops open and slides down instead of the sort of typical routine of a lot of the 90s Gundams where it just like slid forward. The skirt pieces can go up about that high, can kind of go out a little ways and just wobble freely. Side skirts can go out actually pretty far compared to a lot of master grades, and obviously can swing back and forth no problem. The back skirt goes out a little ways. It's not going to really make a huge difference, but there is a... I'm going to take the backpack off here a second to show you that there is a little hinge here that flips this bit down, and I think that's actually for when the X divider holds on to some of its weapons, because there's no real discernible use for it here. So there are some trees in this kit where it definitely seems like they could add a couple more pieces onto it and make the X divider, and I imagine they'll probably do that at some point. The legs can go up about that far, can go back about that far, can go out to the side about that far, can bend at the knee basically 180. It can't quite go all the way simply because the back skirt gets in the way there, but it's pretty close, pretty much 180. And the knee does, you know, adjust to that a little bit because there's an extra piece in there. The ankles and the feet can go back and forth, no problem. Only go side to side a little bit at the ankle, but the feet do tend to swing back and forth pretty good. And that's actually something I've noticed that's similar to the 00 Master Grade, where the feet were able to just sort of swing back and forth, and if you wanted him to do the splits or something, he could do that no problem and still keep his feet flat on the ground. And I think it'll work a little bit better here because this thing has definitely wider feet than the 00 did. And then the toe piece can go up about that far, and can actually go down a little bit too. So if you want some sort of cool like pose on an action base or something, you'll have no problems with that. Now as far as the backpack itself, we're going to have the ability to rotate a number of different hinges there, because you kind of have to rotate it around a bunch in order to get the actual satellite loading cannon to deploy. You can have the little machine gun over the shoulder come down no problem. It'll look decent enough over the Gundam X's shoulder when it's attached to the kit. But really that's just sort of a nice little addition there. It's not the real big bang of this kit, if you will. So to get the satellite loading cannon to come up, you're going to rotate it around like that, and then you're going to spin this around, and you're going to want it to have the satellite loading cannon itself sort of vertical like that, because these panels need to be able to move up and around to get out of the way there. Now what we're going to do with these is we are going to flip them up and spin them around. I believe on the high grade, and most other versions of the Gundam X, you actually had to pop these out and like reattach them, but with these the joints are designed so that you can just rotate it no problem. But if you try and rotate it the wrong way, as you just saw there, this will pop out. It doesn't break or anything. It's attached in such a way that it's loose enough that it'll just kind of pop out, but you do have to rotate it in a certain direction. You can't just rotate it sort of willy-nilly there. Now when you've got the backpack all aligned correctly, you're going to have it in such a way that it actually sticks back a little bit, and that's to give it enough room that these panels aren't going to bump into the kit a bunch. You're going to have the cannon itself stuck back a little bit, but there's so much in the front here that it'll come forward plenty, and you're going to pull this part of the cannon forward and drop the handle down, and then it'll just sort of situate over his shoulder there and look really cool. So let's attach that, shall we? And so when all's said and done with that little transformation bit there, if you will, it looks really cool to have the satellite loading cannon deployed. You can have his arm up and over holding onto it for an extra grip there if you want to, like I've done here. Or if you don't want the shoulder to look quite as wonky, you can just have it relaxed at his side. But either way, I really like the way that this looks. The panels are great. You can't really tell with the light I've got here, but if I move it around a little bit, you might be able to see that there's definitely a little bit of glimmer underneath there. It looks way better in person, and part of that's just because of the reflection on the clear plastic on the outside. But I definitely like the way that it looks overall. The presentation of this kit's just fantastic. Now you may have noticed I already pulled the rifle out of his backpack there, and to transform this is pretty easy. You can just flip the sides up a little bit to get the handle to come out and to extend the barrel here, and then you can close them back down and pop up the scope, which has a little piece there that you attach or grip your thumb around. It takes a little bit of coaxing, but it'll come up. It is a little bit loose, and I'm not real fond of that, but once you get it up, if you lean it back a little bit like that, it should be okay. And then if you want it in shield mode, and put the scope back down, retract the barrel, and there you have the shield version. Admittedly, this is kind of a lame shield, one because it doesn't look that big and practical, also because the handle is back here. Even on the high grade version and the old kits of this version, this shield was never that impressive to me as far as its design goes. But the rifle itself, I like the way that it looks. And the beam saber, you can pull out the handle from the back of the satellite loading cannon there. And I like the way that they did some simple color definition here. It's got that black inner part of the handle, gray on the bottom. Just adds a little bit more variety to it. And of course you have the really cool green effect piece for the beam saber itself. It's not quite as thick on the sides as the high grade version, which was actually two pieces that were slapped together, but it does have enough, I guess, width to it and length, and it looks really cool. And then you also get a pilot figure of Garrett Ran. Obviously there's one in the cockpit already sitting down, but then you do get the little standing unpainted figure that if you wanted to go ahead and paint, you could. I never do, just because these figures are absolutely tiny and I don't plan to ever use them, but you do get it with this kit if you want. Now, one other thing that's really nice with this kit is you do get a custom piece included to attach to an action base. And the way that this is going to connect is actually going to slide underneath the backpack here, right between the skirt armor and the actual backpack itself, and it sticks in there nice. And the great thing is that there's a peg that goes into the back that's really deep in there and holds really well, so that you're not going to have any real troubles about, you know, this holding on from that point. And then you're just going to take any old action base, like this clear one that I bought specifically for this kit, and then you can pop him in there, and he holds just fine, and you can get all sorts of cool action poses that way. Admittedly, this might not be the greatest action pose I could have pulled off, but it's something sort of simple just to give you an idea of what you can do with this kit once it's mounted on the action base. And I really like the way that it looks. You know, you got kind of a cool little dash jump pose there with the satellite cannon deployed. And much like with the hybrid, I think the effect look of this beam saber really goes a long way in just giving it some extra flair and flash, and the feet on this kit do a really good job of creating some dynamic poses when you want to stick him up on an action base, or even when he's just standing on the ground. So overall, I'd have to say my feelings toward this kit are very positive. I love the way that this kit looks, and I think based on appearances alone, it's probably among my favorites of all the Master Grades in my collection. The angles are just great, the dimensions are perfect, the colors just really stand out well the way that they are. There's a little bit more panel lining than I guess I anticipated with this kit, but it all looks really good when it's completed. The build process is a lot of fun with this kit, though I will say it's not the most complex build. So if you're looking for something, you know, extra challenging, I don't think you're going to find something here that's too out of the ordinary. And really, I guess if I had to, like, knock this thing down a couple points for any reason whatsoever, it'd be just the fact that this isn't a revolutionary kit by any means. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that I think a lot of people were expecting something vastly different with this kit that we hadn't seen in other Master Grades, and that's simply not the case. There's a lot of familiarity here in the build process and in the joints and in the poseability, but overall it is a really well-designed kit, and that's, I think, really what matters more than anything else, is that this kit is going to please you whether you're a huge fan of Gundam X, or you're just trying to collect a lead Gundam from every series, or you just like the way that it looks. I think you're going to really enjoy building this kit, enjoy posing it, just enjoy all the weapons and accessories that comes with it, and it's really not that expensive of a Master Grade for its price point. At 3,800 yen, you do get quite a bit of bang for your buck here with this kit, and while for me personally it's maybe not a standout a model kit in my own collection when compared to something like the Crossbone or the Turn A, I think the X hits all the right notes for different reasons, and that being that it's simply just a very well-designed kit, and like I said, you get a lot for your money here. If you're on the fence about getting this kit, I would say just go for it. It's honestly a really well-proportioned, well-colored, well-accessorized kit for its price point. And it's just fun to look at. Like, sitting on your shelf, this thing stands out among the other kits more than I expected it would. And so because of that reason, I think as time goes by, I'm going to come to appreciate this kit even more than I already do. But that pretty much wraps up this review, and with that, I will see you guys next time.